Okay, this is going to be a quick intro to carburetors. There's two main types of carburetors that we're going to deal with in this class. The first one's the vacuum jet carburetor, as I described previously when we were looking at components for the L-head motors. But once again, this is a carburetor that mounts on top of the gas tank, and it uses vacuum to pull the gas out of the tank into the venturi where it's mixed with fuel and air, and I'm going to show you a cutaway of this in a minute. So this is the vacuum jet. The other type of carburetor that we see a lot is something that looks like this. It's the bowl style carburetor. A lot of times it's gravity fed. What happens is the gas will come from a fuel tank that's obviously higher than the carburetor, and it will fill this bowl up with fuel like a reservoir. And inside of that bowl, there's a float. And so when the float goes up, it actually closes the inlet valve, and it stops fuel from flowing to the carburetor. And then as the motor sucks the fuel out of the bowl through the venturi, that float will drop down as the fuel level in the bowl drops down, the float drops down, and then it allows more gas to enter in. So it's this continuous cycle that's keeping the bowl full, and then as the motor is either idling or running, consuming the fuel, and then that in return that float drops a little, and then it allows more fuel into the bowl, and then the motor uses the fuel, and it's just a constant cycle. A couple other things on here that I'm going to point out. One of them right here is, and I'm going to flip this around. This is our choke plate right here. So one of the things that you'll notice in a minute when I show you the cutaway is the carburetors are always connected to the air cleaner, and that air cleaner is separating the air that the engine's pulling in for combustion. It's separating it from dirt and any other contaminants that may be in there. And one of the things we can do when we're starting a motor is we can choke the motor. And literally what's happening when we choke the motor is we're restricting the airflow to the motor. So if you think about it, like if you're a human and you were choking, you would be gasping for air, your airflow would be restricted. The same type of principles happening with the carburetor, and that's controlled on this style of a carb just by a lever that controls this choke plate. If I spin this around, you'll notice there's another plate located inside that venturi, and this is the throttle plate. Okay, and what this does is this throttle plate basically allows either more or less fuel air mixture into the cylinder. So as you increase your RPM or your workload on your motor, you're going to want to make sure that you're opening up this throttle plate as well, so you have more fuel air mixture flowing to the motor for the work that it's performing. A couple other things on this carburetor, there are a couple of screws you need to pay attention to. One of them is the idle speed screw, so you can set this to a determined length so it controls the idle speed. And then the other one is the mix screw down here. You can either increase the fuel that's going through the jet by moving the screw out, or you can restrict the fuel that's going through the jet by screwing it in. And that is the jet that is basically the pathway in which the fuel is flowing from the bowl through the carburetor. So I'm going to show you a couple of quick cutaways here. Alright, I'm not going to be in this video, but that's alright. The cutaway of this L-head's in here, and then this is the style of carburetor that we're looking at here, the cutaway on. So this one's a little different than the one I just described. You can see the choke mechanism on this is back here. So when this is in all the way, this is not restricting any of the airflow to the motor. to choke this motor, you'd actually pull this out, and this is the vacuum jet carburetor. As you can see, the tank is located below it, and it's pulling the fuel up from the tank. All right, so that's that one. And then we're going to slide down here and I'll just show you this gravity feed style. This is on a cutaway of a 4-stroke motor as well. And you can see here, this is the carburetor I was just describing. This is how it's going to be located on the motor. This happens to be a horizontal configuration here with a vertical shaft. So this looks a little different than what you might see, but this might be common to like a motor on your lawnmower or something like that. But you can see your carburetor right here, which would be fed from a fuel tank. That's up here. Once again, that's a gravity feed because the fuel is moving down. There is a third type that I'm going to talk about in just one second. Okay, really quick to finish up this lecture video on the carburetors. There is a third type that we see on our Kohler V-twins out in the shop. It's a little loud out there right now, so I'm not going to be able to record the video and show you and point it out. But it's still carbureted, but it has a fuel pump on it, so it's mechanically driven. So the three types were vacuum, gravity feed, and then you can have mechanically or fuel pump that operates and pumps the fuel up to the carburetor.